Hey guys, so today is August 21st, 2025. I am in Texas State University, and today I am going to be explaining all the president's favorite presidents. I got this information from my fellow YouTuber, Mr. Beat. You can go ahead and follow him on YouTube. Here we go. George Washington. His favorite president was John Adams. That's a weird thing to say because Adams was the only president he saw in office other than himself, and Adams was his vice president. So clearly that's a little biased, but hey, everyone's biased. John Adams. Adams's favorite president was probably George Washington, mainly because he was Washington's vice president. So clearly he was biased too. Thomas Jefferson. Jefferson's favorite president was probably his friend, James Madison. And that's because Madison was his Secretary of State and his policies were similar to Jefferson's. James Madison. Madison's favorite president was Jefferson. And that's because he was Jefferson's Secretary of State and he looked up to Jefferson. Not just literally because he was a foot shorter than Jefferson, but because Jefferson was a mentor. James Monroe. Monroe's favorite president was likely Jefferson, and that's because his policies were as similar as Madison and Jefferson, and Jefferson was his law teacher during the Revolutionary War when he was 22 years old. John Quincy Adams. Adams's favorite president was his dad, John Adams. Clearly he was biased too, but hey, I don't blame him. Andrew Jackson. His favorite president was Jefferson. The feeling was not mutual. Jefferson thought Jackson was crazy. Martin Van Buren. His favorite president was Jefferson, but many argue that it might have been Jackson because Jackson listened to Van Buren. And plus, he served in Jackson's administration at so many things, including Secretary of State and Vice President. William Henry Harrison. Harrison's favorite president was Washington, and that's probably because Washington was a family friend when Harrison was a kid. John Tyler. Tyler's favorite president was Jefferson. When he was 14 years old, he kissed Jefferson's butt big time. Okay, dude, maybe you two should get a room. James Polk. Polk's favorite president was Jackson. Like Jefferson to Madison, Jackson was like a mentor to Polk. They both lived in Tennessee. Zachary Taylor. Taylor's favorite president was Washington because his dad had so much love for Washington. Millard Fillmore. Fillmore's favorite president was Washington. He visited Mount Vernon many times during his presidency. Franklin Pierce. Pierce's favorite president was Jackson. Jackson inspired Pierce to be a politician at the young age of 20-something. James Buchanan. Buchanan's favorite president was Washington, and that inspired his mom's love of Washington. She even named one of his brothers George Washington. Buchanan. It's weird to say that most who say the best president had a favorite president, but he did, okay? Abraham Lincoln. Lincoln's favorite president was Washington. Andrew Johnson. Johnson's favorite president was Jackson. And now we get to all the Abraham Lincoln fanboys. Ulysses Grant. Grant loved Lincoln. He fought for him during the Civil War. Rutherford Hayes. Hayes also loved Lincoln, but he also liked Washington. James Garfield. Garfield also loved Lincoln, and we can only assume that because he had Lincoln's oldest son, Robert Todd Lincoln, as Secretary of War. Chester Arthur. It's unclear who Arthur's favorite president was, but it is clear that he didn't like James Polk. When he was 15 years old, he didn't even support Polk in his run for president. He probably supported Henry Clay, even though he was not old enough to vote. He was only 15 years old. So I'm just going to assume that Lincoln was Arthur's favorite president. Grover Cleveland, the 22nd and 24th president, his favorite president was Jefferson. There's little evidence to prove it, but his policies were kind of similar than Jefferson's. Benjamin Harrison. Surprisingly, his favorite president was not his grandfather, William Henry Harrison. His favorite president was Lincoln. William McKinley. McKinley also loved Lincoln. He was the last president to serve in the Civil War. He was 18 years old when it started. And these next two presidents also loved Lincoln. Theodore Roosevelt. Roosevelt loved Lincoln. And William Howard Taft. Taft also loved Lincoln as the 10th Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. He dedicated the Lincoln Memorial and met with Lincoln's oldest son, Robert Todd Lincoln, who was 78 years old at the time. Dang, it happens that everyone loved Lincoln. That is, until this guy showed up. Woodrow Wilson wasn't so much a Lincoln fan. His favorite president was Jefferson. Okay, back to Lincoln. Warren Harding. Harding's favorite president was Lincoln. Calvin Coolidge. Coolidge also loved Lincoln, but I'm going to say his favorite president was George Washington. Herbert Hoover. This may be a surprise, but I think Hoover's favorite president was Theodore Roosevelt. He even supported him in Roosevelt's Bull Moose run for president in 1912. Franklin Roosevelt. Roosevelt's favorite president was Theodore, his fifth cousin. So clearly he was biased too, but the first time he could vote in 1904, he voted for Roosevelt, even though Theodore was a Republican and Franklin was a Democrat. Harry Truman. Truman's favorite president was Jefferson. Dwight Eisenhower. Eisenhower's favorite president was... I can make a pretty good guess. George Washington. Kennedy probably had several favorite presidents. John Quincy Adams, Franklin Roosevelt, despite there being tensions between the Roosevelt and Kennedy families, but his favorite president was Jefferson. Lyndon B. Johnson. Johnson's favorite president was Franklin Roosevelt. Richard Nixon. Nixon's favorite president was Wilson. Why am I not surprised? Gerald Ford. Ford's favorite president was Eisenhower. Jimmy Carter. Carter's favorite president was Harry Truman. Oh, we got some good evidence to prove that. He once said, and I quote, "My favorite president is Harry Truman." Ronald Reagan. Reagan's favorite president was Calvin Coolidge. George H.W. Bush. Bush's favorite president was Lincoln. Bill Clinton. Clinton's favorite president is Kennedy. We can only assume that because he met Kennedy when he was 16 years old, just months before Kennedy was assassinated. George W. Bush. Bush's favorite president is his dad, George H.W. Bush. Clearly he was biased too. He even delivered a eulogy for his dad when he was 72 years old, when his dad died. Barack Obama. Obama's favorite president is Lincoln. Donald Trump. Trump's favorite president is Jackson. And Joe Biden. Biden's favorite president is Franklin Roosevelt. And I'll share you mine. My favorite president is Abraham Lincoln. Make sure you like and subscribe to see more.